I'm Mr. Midnight Hollow, your terrifying host, and you're about to hear that story in today's episode of Terrifying Encounters. Today, I've got a haunting tale of wrongful execution and supernatural revenge, featuring a man who sold his soul to become a brutal killing machine, descendants marked for death by blood guilt, and a desperate race to break an ancient curse before Charleston drowns in blood. If you're already part of our community, your support means the world to us. Each like, comment, and share helps uncover more stories like this. Or subscribe to see what rises from the depths of darkness and unfolds before you. Now, let's begin. I never believed in curses until I found the old newspaper in my grandmother's attic. Charleston, South Carolina, 1865. The article was yellow with age, the ink faded but still readable. It told the story of a man named Elijah Moss, a freed slave who worked at the harbor. They accused him of stealing from a merchant's warehouse. He swore he was innocent, but nobody listened. The execution took place on a humid August morning in Marion Square. Hundreds gathered to watch. Men brought their sons. Women wore their Sunday dresses. The atmosphere felt like a carnival. People laughing and placing bets on how long he would struggle. I know this because my great-great-grandfather kept a journal. He was there that day, standing in the crowd with his father. He wrote about the strange feeling that came over everyone when Elijah was brought to the gallows. Elijah's hands were bound behind his back. His face was bruised, his lip split. 2 guards dragged him up the wooden steps. The crowd went silent as the executioner placed the noose around his neck. That's when Elijah spoke. His voice was clear, cutting through the morning air like a blade. He didn't beg. He didn't cry. Instead, he looked directly at the crowd and smiled. Blood ran down his chin from his broken lip. "You want justice?" he said. "You'll get justice. Every single one of you who came here today, who watched this happen, who did nothing. I swear on my soul and the souls of my ancestors, I will return. I will find you. I will tear the flesh from your bones and make you scream for mercy that will never come." Someone in the crowd laughed nervously. The executioner pulled the lever. Elijah's body dropped. His neck didn't break cleanly. He struggled for almost 3 minutes, his feet kicking, his body twisting. The crowd watched in uncomfortable silence. Children started crying. Some people left. But Elijah kept his eyes open the entire time. He stared at the crowd, memorizing faces until finally his body went still. They buried him that afternoon in an unmarked grave outside the city limits. The preacher refused to perform last rites. Nobody spoke at the burial except the 2 men who shoveled dirt onto the pine coffin. My great-great-grandfather wrote that he couldn't sleep that night. He kept seeing Elijah's eyes, the way they had burned with hatred even as life left his body. 3 days later, strange things started happening. A farmer named Garrett Webb was the first to notice. He lived on the outskirts of Charleston with his wife and 3 children. He had been at the execution, brought his oldest son to teach him about justice. On the 3rd night after the hanging, Garrett woke to the sound of his chickens screaming. He grabbed his shotgun and went outside. The hen house door was torn off its hinges. Inside, every chicken was dead, ripped apart. Blood covered the walls. Feathers floated in the air. But that wasn't what made Garrett's hands shake. In the dirt outside the hen house, he found tracks. They started as human footprints, bare feet, adult male size. But halfway across the yard, they changed. They became something else, larger, clawed, something that walked on 4 legs. Garrett told the sheriff the next morning. The sheriff laughed, said it was probably a bear or a wild dog, told Garrett to stop drinking so much whiskey. 2 nights later, Garrett's neighbor, Thomas Blackwood, disappeared. Thomas had also been at the hanging. His wife woke up around midnight and found his side of the bed empty. She assumed he'd gone to use the outhouse. When he didn't come back after an hour, she lit a lantern and went looking. She found the outhouse door open, swinging in the wind. Thomas's nightshirt was on the ground, torn to pieces. A trail of blood led into the woods. The sheriff organized a search party at dawn. 20 men with rifles and dogs. They followed the blood trail for 2 miles into the pine forest. The dogs went crazy, barking and pulling at their leashes. Then suddenly, they all stopped. Every single dog sat down and refused to move. They whined and trembled, their ears flat against their heads. The men continued without the dogs. Half a mile further, they found Thomas. What was left of him? His body was wedged into the fork of a massive oak tree, 15 feet off the ground. His chest had been torn open, ribs spread like wings. His organs were gone. His face was frozen in a scream, eyes wide, mouth open. Deep claw marks covered his arms and legs. But the worst part was his hands. Someone or something had positioned them to point back toward Charleston, back toward the city where Elijah had died. The sheriff's report called it an animal attack, a bear, maybe a panther. But the men who saw the body knew better. The wounds were too precise, too deliberate, and no animal could have lifted a full-grown man 15 feet into a tree. That night, 3 more people disappeared. All of them had been at the execution. All of them lived on the outskirts of town. By morning, only one body had been found. Margaret Finch, a widow who ran a boarding house. She was discovered in her cellar, her throat torn out, her body positioned sitting upright against the wall. Her dead eyes stared at the stairs, as if watching for something to come down. The town started to panic. Families locked their doors and windows. Men sat up all night with loaded rifles. The sheriff deputized 15 additional men and organized nightly patrols, but the attacks continued. Every night, when the moon rose, someone else died. Always someone who had been at the hanging. Always brutal, savage, methodical. The bodies were displayed, positioned to send a message. This wasn't random violence. This was revenge. My great-great-grandfather wrote about the fear that gripped Charleston. People stopped going out after dark. Businesses closed early. The streets were empty by sunset, but it didn't matter. The thing, whatever it was, came for them anyway. It broke through locked doors. It climbed through second-story windows. It found them no matter where they hid. On the 7th night, someone finally saw it. Jacob Russell, a blacksmith who lived near the harbor, heard something on his roof around midnight. He grabbed his pistol and went outside. The moon was full that night, bright enough to see clearly. The creature was crouched on the peak of his roof. Jacob described it in a sworn statement to the sheriff. It was roughly man-shaped but larger, maybe 7 feet tall. Its body was covered in dark fur. Its hands and feet had long, curved claws. But the face was the worst part. It was almost human, but stretched and distorted. The jaw was too long, filled with teeth that belonged to a predator, and the eyes glowed with an intelligence that was distinctly, terrifyingly human. Jacob raised his pistol and fired. The creature moved faster than anything he'd ever seen. It leaped from the roof, covered the 30 feet between them in seconds, and was on him before he could fire again. Jacob's wife heard him screaming. She ran to the window and saw her husband on the ground, the creature crouched over him. She described how it looked up at her, its face covered in blood, and she saw something in its eyes. Recognition. Knowledge. As if it knew exactly who she was, and that her time would come. Then it vanished into the darkness, dragging Jacob's body with it. They found what remained of Jacob the next morning, hung from the lamppost in Marion Square, the same lamppost where Elijah's execution notice had been posted. His body was mutilated beyond recognition, but they knew it was him from his wedding ring. Pinned to his chest was a piece of paper. Written in blood were 5 words, 23 more to go. The sheriff counted the names of everyone who had attended the execution, 147 people. So far, 24 were dead. The creature was keeping track. It had a list, and it was working through it systematically, one by one. That's when my great-great-grandfather made a decision that probably saved his life. He took his family and left Charleston that very day. Didn't pack much, didn't say goodbye to anyone. Just loaded his wife and children into a wagon and headed north. Many others did the same. Within a week, half the town had evacuated. But the creature didn't follow them. It stayed in Charleston, hunting those who remained. Those who thought they could hide. Those who thought they could fight back. The killings continued every night for 3 more weeks. My name is Daniel Pierce, and I'm a crime historian specializing in unexplained deaths from the Civil War era. 3 months ago, I moved to Charleston to research a book about post-war violence in the South. That's when I found my great-great-grandfather's journal in a storage unit my family had maintained for generations. Reading those entries changed everything I thought I knew about history, about reality. The journal ended abruptly. The last entry was dated September 15, 1865, written from somewhere in Virginia. My great-great-grandfather never returned to Charleston. He died in 1903, having lived a quiet life far from South Carolina, never speaking about what happened that summer. But his journal gave names, dates, locations, and I had to know if any of it was true. I started with the newspaper archives, the Charleston Mercury, August through October 1865. At first I found nothing about Elijah Moss or his execution. Then I discovered why. Someone had removed those specific pages from every archived copy in the Charleston Historical Society. Every single one. But old newspapers were distributed across multiple cities. I expanded my search to Savannah, Atlanta, Richmond. Finally, in a private collection in Richmond, I found it. The August 12, 1865 edition, intact. Front page story about the execution of a man named Elijah Moss, convicted of theft. The article was brief, clinical, noting that justice had been served. There was no mention of what happened after, but I found other articles. Small stories buried in the back pages of newspapers from late August through September. Mysterious deaths plague Charleston. Sheriff declares state of emergency. Mass exodus as fear grips city. The stories were vague, carefully worded to avoid panic. They spoke of animal attacks, possible rabid wolves or bears. But reading between the lines, knowing what my great-great-grandfather had written, I could see the truth they were hiding. I needed more. I drove out to the old Charleston City Cemetery, searching for graves from that period. Most of the people who died that summer weren't buried in the main cemetery. I found their names in a separate ledger, marked as victims of animal attacks, buried in unmarked plots in the paupers section. 27 names total. My great-great-grandfather's journal mentioned 24 deaths before he fled. That meant 3 more people died after he left. Then the killing stopped. Or so the historical record suggested. I spent 2 weeks interviewing descendants of Charleston families who'd lived through that period. Most had no knowledge of the events. Their ancestors had never spoken about it. But a few families had stories passed down through generations. Whispered tales told late at night, warnings to children about going out during full moons. One elderly woman, Catherine Drummond, invited me to her home in the historic district. She served sweet tea on her porch and told me about her great-great-great-aunt, who had survived the dark summer, as she called it. Aunt Rebecca never married, Catherine said. Never left this house after 1865. She kept every door locked, every window barred, even in the heat of summer. My grandmother said Rebecca would have nightmares, wake up screaming about yellow eyes and claws scraping on wood. Did she ever say what she saw? I asked. Catherine was quiet for a moment, looking out at the street. Once, when she was dying, fevered and delirious, she said a man came back from the grave, a man who sold his soul for revenge. She said he hunted them like animals, and nobody could stop him because he wasn't human anymore. Not entirely. What happened to him? Why did the attack stop? That's the strange part. Rebecca said he just vanished. One night the killing stopped. Some people thought he'd gotten everyone on his list. Others believed he'd gone dormant, waiting. Rebecca spent the rest of her life waiting for him to come back. I thanked Catherine for her time and returned to my apartment near the College of Charleston. I lived on the third floor of a renovated building that had stood since the 1850s. As I climbed the stairs, I wondered if Elijah Moss had walked these same streets, worked at these same docks, before they destroyed his life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the journal entries, the newspaper articles, Catherine's story about her ancestor. Around midnight, I got up and made coffee, sitting at my desk to review my notes. That's when I heard it. Scratching. Soft at first, like tree branches against the window. But I was on the third floor, and there were no trees that close to the building. The sound continued, rhythmic and deliberate. Scratching that moved across the exterior wall from window to window. I turned off my desk lamp and moved quietly to the window. The street below was empty, lit by old-fashioned gas lamps the city maintained for historic authenticity. Nothing moved in the pools of yellow light. The scratching stopped. I waited, my heart pounding. Minutes passed. Just as I started to relax, convinced I'd imagined it, I saw movement in the alley beside my building. A figure stood in the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, perfectly still. I couldn't make out details, but I felt its attention focused on my window, on me. Then it moved into the light. I stumbled backward, knocking my chair over. The figure was gone when I looked again, but I'd seen enough. Enough to know that what my great-great-grandfather had written wasn't just history. It wasn't over. The next morning, I went to the Charleston Police Department. I asked to speak with someone about cold cases from the 1800s. They sent me to a detective named Sarah Reeves, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "Mr. Pierce, I'm not sure what you think we can help you with," she said after I'd explained my research. "Cases from 1865 aren't exactly in our active files." "I know how this sounds," I said, "but I found evidence of multiple murders that were covered up or misclassified as animal attacks. I think there's a pattern, and I think it might still be relevant." She raised an eyebrow. "Still relevant? You're talking about something that happened over 150 years ago." "Just hear me out. The victims were all connected. They all attended a specific event, and the nature of their deaths was consistent, methodical. This wasn't random violence." Detective Reeves sighed and pulled up something on her computer. "Mr. Pierce, I'll tell you something that's not public knowledge. We've had 3 unsolved murders in Charleston in the past year. All of them were incredibly violent. Bodies mutilated in ways that suggested rage or ritual. We haven't found connections between the victims, no common associates or activities. They seemed random." My pulse quickened. "Can you tell me the dates?" She hesitated, then turned her screen so I could see. The dates of the murders were September 17th, October 19th, and November 21st of the previous year. Full moons. All of them. "Did you find anything unusual at the crime scenes?" I asked. "Any tracks, marks, evidence of an animal attack?" "How did you know that?" Her expression changed, became more guarded. We found claw marks on 2 of the victims, deep gouges that didn't match any known animal. The medical examiner couldn't explain them. I pulled out my great-great-grandfather's journal and opened it to the pages describing the 1865 murders. I showed her the drawings he'd made of the wounds, the positioning of bodies, the claw marks. Detective Reeves went pale. "Where did you get this?" "Family archive. This journal was written during the events. My ancestor fled Charleston because of what was happening. According to historical records, the killings stopped in September 1865. 27 people died over the course of 6 weeks. And you think this is connected to current murders?" "I think something that started in 1865 never really ended. I think it's been dormant, waiting, and I think it's active again." She closed the journal and pushed it back across the desk. "Mr. Pierce, I appreciate the historical research, but I deal with facts and evidence. I can't investigate a case based on a journal from the Civil War era and some coincidental similarities. What if I could show you more evidence? What if there's a pattern you haven't seen? Then bring it to me and I'll look at it. But right now, I have 3 open homicides and limited resources. I can't chase theories about curses or supernatural killers." I left the police station frustrated but not discouraged. If Detective Reeves wouldn't help, I'd have to investigate on my own. I spent the rest of the day at the Historical Society, digging through property records and death certificates. I found something interesting. The 3 recent murder victims all lived in areas that had been developed on land that was once outside the city limits in 1865. Land near where Elijah Moss had been buried. I needed to find that grave. According to burial records, Elijah had been interred in a plot designated for executed criminals, about 3 miles from what was then the city boundary. That area was now part of a sprawling residential neighborhood. But using old maps, I was able to narrow down the location. That evening, I drove out to the neighborhood. The houses were modern, built in the 1990s. Soccer moms and families with young children. Nothing about the area suggested its dark history. I parked near a small retention pond and walked into a strip of undeveloped land between 2 housing subdivisions. According to my maps, this was approximately where the burial ground had been. Development had erased most traces of the past, but I searched anyway, looking for anything unusual. I found it just before sunset. A depression in the ground, roughly rectangular, about 6 feet long. The earth around it was disturbed, as if something had been digging. I knelt down and brushed away loose soil. My fingers touched wood. I dug faster, uncovering splintered planks. A coffin, or what remained of one. The wood was ancient, rotted through in places. I could see into the interior. The coffin was empty. A sound behind me made me spin around. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the trees. For a moment, I thought I saw a figure standing at the edge of the tree line. Then my phone rang, the sound shockingly loud in the quiet evening. I fumbled it out of my pocket. Detective Reeves. "Mr. Pierce, where are you right now?" "I'm at the old burial site near—" "Get out of there! Now! We just found another body. Same pattern as the others." "And Mr. Pierce?" "The victim's name was Catherine Drummond. The woman you interviewed yesterday. Someone saw you leaving her house." The phone slipped from my hand. I turned back toward the tree line. The figure was closer now. Close enough that I could see it wasn't human. Close enough to see the eyes that glowed yellow in the dying light. Close enough to hear the low, rumbling growl that came from its throat. I ran. My legs moved before my brain fully processed what I was seeing. I crashed through underbrush, branches tearing at my clothes and skin. Behind me, I heard movement. Fast. Too fast. Something massive was pursuing me through the trees, and it was gaining. I burst out of the woods onto someone's backyard. A motion sensor light flicked on, momentarily blinding me. I stumbled, almost fell, then kept running. I could hear the creature behind me, its claws digging into earth, propelling it forward with terrifying speed. A fence blocked my path. 6 feet tall, wooden. I grabbed the top and pulled myself up, my arms screaming with effort. I threw myself over just as something slammed into the other side. The entire fence shook. Wood cracked and splintered. I landed hard on concrete, the impact driving the air from my lungs. I was in another backyard, this one with a swimming pool covered for winter. I scrambled to my feet and ran toward the house. Through the sliding glass door, I could see a family eating dinner. A man, woman, and 2 young children. I pounded on the glass. "Let me in, please." The man stood up, alarmed. He moved toward the door, then stopped. His eyes went wide, focused on something behind me. I turned. The creature stood at the edge of the pool, fully visible in the porch light. It was even more horrifying than my great-great-grandfather had described. 7 feet tall, covered in dark, matted fur. Its body was muscular, built like a man but proportioned wrong, limbs too long, torso too broad. The head was the worst part. The skull structure was almost human, but the jaw protruded forward, filled with teeth designed for tearing flesh. And the eyes. They glowed yellow, but there was intelligence behind them. Human intelligence twisted by something ancient and evil. It looked at me, then at the family inside the house. It tilted its head, as if considering whether they were worth the effort. Then it smiled. The expression was wrong on that face, a grotesque parody of human emotion. It raised one massive clawed hand and pointed at me. The message was clear. Not yet. But soon. The creature turned and vanished into the darkness between houses. The sliding door opened behind me. The man grabbed my arm and pulled me inside, immediately locking the door. His wife had already called 911, her voice shaking as she gave the address. "What the hell was that thing?" the man demanded. His name was Phil, I learned later. Phil Morrison, an accountant with a wife and 2 kids, who'd just seen something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "You need to get your family out of this neighborhood," I said. "Right now. Pack a bag and leave Charleston." "Are you insane? We're not leaving our home because of some... That thing just killed an elderly woman last night. She was the 4th victim in a year, and it's not going to stop. If you stay here, you're putting your children in danger." Phil's wife, Jennifer, was listening. She looked at her kids, then at me. What was that thing? Something that shouldn't exist. Something that's been hunting people in this city for over 150 years. The police arrived 15 minutes later. Detective Reeves was with them. She found me sitting on the Morrisons' couch, a towel pressed against scratches on my arms where branches had torn my skin. "Mr. Pierce," she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "You want to explain to me what happened here?" I told her everything. The empty grave. The figure in the trees, the chase. I expected her to dismiss it, to suggest I'd been attacked by a dog or that stress had made me hallucinate. Instead, she sat down across from me and pulled out her phone. She showed me a photo. This was taken by a security camera 3 blocks from Catherine Drummond's house, approximately 30 minutes before her estimated time of death. The image was grainy, taken in low light, but clear enough. A large figure moving through someone's yard. Too tall to be human, moving with an unnatural gait. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m. We have 3 more cameras that caught similar footage over the past year. Always on nights when murders occurred. Always during full moons. We've been keeping this quiet because we didn't know what we were dealing with. Still don't, officially. But I'm starting to think your historical research might be more relevant than I wanted to believe. The next full moon is in 6 days, I said. It's going to kill again. Then we have 6 days to figure out how to stop it. Detective Reeves stood up. I'm putting you in protective custody. If this thing targeted Catherine Drummond because of her connection to you, you might be next on its list. They took me to a safe house on the outskirts of the city, a small apartment above a police substation. 2 officers were assigned to watch the building. Detective Reeves said she'd be back in the morning to go over everything I knew about the 1865 murders. I spent the night reading through my great-great-grandfather's journal again, looking for any detail I might have missed. He'd written extensively about the creature's behavior, its hunting patterns, the way it selected victims. One entry caught my attention. Written September 10th, 1865, 5 days before my ancestor fled Charleston. Reverend Walsh believes the creature is bound by the terms of Moss's curse. It can only kill those who were present at the execution or their descendants. It seeks to fulfill the vengeance Moss swore before his death. But Walsh also believes the curse is incomplete. Moss died with his soul sold, but his revenge unfulfilled. The creature is trapped, unable to truly rest, compelled to continue hunting even after all original witnesses are dead. It has become something eternal, something that can never stop. I read the passage 3 times. If the Reverend was right, the creature wasn't just hunting randomly. It was targeting descendants of the people who watched Elijah Moss die. I grabbed my laptop and started cross-referencing. The 3 murder victims from the past year: Jennifer Hartley, Michael Costa, and Raymond Price. I searched genealogy databases looking for their ancestry. It took me 4 hours, but I found the connections. Jennifer Hartley was the great-great-great-granddaughter of Samuel Hartley, a shopkeeper who attended the execution. Michael Costa descended from Anthony Costa, a dock worker who'd been in the crowd. Raymond Price was related to the Webb family. Garrett Webb, the farmer whose chickens had been slaughtered on the 3rd night after Elijah's death, and Catherine Drummond, killed the previous night, descended from Rebecca Drummond, the woman who survived the 1865 killings but spent the rest of her life in fear. The creature was still working through its list. Not the original witnesses, but their bloodlines. It was patient, methodical, and it had plenty of time. I called Detective Reeves even though it was 3 in the morning. She answered on the 2nd ring, sounding alert. Probably hadn't slept either. I know how it's choosing victims, I said. I explained my findings. She was silent for a long moment. If you're right, we need to identify every descendant of people who were at that execution. We need to warn them, protect them. There were 147 people in that crowd. Even if only half of them had children, and those children had children, we're talking about hundreds of potential targets spread across the country. Then we start with the ones still in Charleston. I'll have my team begin pulling records at first light. She paused. Mr. Pierce, have you checked your own ancestry? You said your great-great-grandfather was there. My blood went cold. He left. He ran away and never came back. But he was present at the execution. He saw it happen. And you're here now, doing research, drawing attention to yourself. Have you considered that you might be on the list too? I hadn't. I'd been so focused on understanding the historical pattern that I hadn't thought about my own connection. My great-great-grandfather had been there. He'd witnessed Elijah's death. By the creature's logic, I was a legitimate target. Get some sleep, Detective Reeves said. We'll talk strategy in the morning. You're safe where you are. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the street below, jumping at every sound. The officers assigned to guard the building changed shifts at 6 a.m. I watched them through the window, making sure they were actually there. Detective Reeves arrived at 8 with coffee and breakfast sandwiches. She looked as tired as I felt. We've identified 17 descendants still living in Charleston, she said, spreading files across the small dining table. 18. Counting you. We're contacting them this morning, offering police protection. They won't all accept. Some will think you're crazy. Then we focus on the ones who will. We set up safe houses, maintain surveillance, and wait for the full moon. When the creature comes out to hunt, we'll be ready. Ready with what? Guns? My great-great-grandfather wrote that multiple men shot at it with rifles and pistols. The bullets didn't stop it. Then we'll use bigger guns. We have resources the 1865 sheriff didn't have. SWAT teams, tactical equipment, high-powered rifles. Something will work. I wasn't as confident, but I didn't argue. At least she was taking the threats seriously. Over the next 3 days, we contacted Descendants. 8 agreed to protective custody. The others either didn't believe us or refused to let fear control their lives. Detective Reeves stationed patrol cars outside their homes anyway, though I doubted it would help. I used the time to research everything I could find about werewolf folklore, curses, and supernatural entities. Most of it was nonsense, fictional accounts or religious superstition, but some sources mentioned consistent themes. Silver bullets, decapitation, fire, methods that supposedly worked against cursed beings. The police armory didn't have silver bullets, but one of the officers knew a gunsmith who could make them. It took 2 days and cost a small fortune, but we got 300 rounds of silver-jacketed ammunition in various calibers. This feels insane, Detective Reeves said as we loaded magazines with the special ammunition. I'm a police detective preparing to hunt a werewolf with silver bullets. If this gets out, my career is over. If this doesn't work, your career will be the least of our problems. The full moon rose on October 31st, Halloween night. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. We'd set up in 3 safe houses, each containing 2 or 3 descendants, with armed police teams stationed at each location. Detective Reeves and I were at the main command post in the police station, monitoring radio communications and security camera feeds from around the city. The attack started at 10:47 p.m., not at the safe houses. The creature was smarter than that. It hit an unprotected descendant, a man named Gregory Walsh, who'd refused police protection. He lived alone in a house near the historic district. A neighbor called 911 after hearing screams. By the time officers arrived 8 minutes later, Gregory was dead. The responding officers found his front door torn off its hinges, lying in the yard. Inside, the house was destroyed. Furniture overturned, walls gouged with deep claw marks, blood everywhere. Gregory's body was in the bedroom, or what remained of it. The creature had torn him apart with savage efficiency. But this time, it had left something new. A message written in blood on the bedroom wall. 18 more. It knew exactly how many descendants remained in Charleston, and it was announcing its intentions. All units, stay alert, Detective Reeves ordered into the radio. The suspect is active and extremely dangerous. Use of lethal force is authorized. 3 more attacks occurred over the next 2 hours. 2 at homes of descendants who'd refused protection. 1 at a safe house. The safe house attack was the worst. The creature came through a second-story window, moving so fast the officers barely had time to react. It killed one officer instantly, nearly decapitating him with a single swipe of its claws. The other officer managed to fire 6 rounds from his service pistol before the creature disemboweled him. The 2 descendants in the house, a brother and sister named Marcus and Lisa Pemberton, barricaded themselves in the bathroom. They could hear the creature outside stalking through the house, searching for them. Marcus called 911, whispering into his phone while his sister cried silently beside him. Backup arrived 4 minutes later. The SWAT team entered the house, weapons ready. They found the 2 dead officers and a trail of destruction. But no creature. Marcus and Lisa were still in the bathroom, traumatized but alive. The creature had left before reinforcements arrived, vanishing into the night. By midnight, 6 more people were dead. 4 descendants and 2 police officers. The creature was demonstrating that it couldn't be stopped, that all our preparations were futile. Detective Reeves looked at the growing casualty reports with despair. We're losing this fight. That thing is picking us off one by one, and we can't even slow it down. Then we changed tactics, I said. We stop defending and start attacking. We need to find it before it finds its next victim. How? It could be anywhere in the city. I pulled up the map of 1865 Charleston I'd been studying, overlaying it with modern street maps. Every attack in 1865 happened within a 3-mile radius of Marion Square. That's where Elijah died. The recent attacks are centered on the old burial ground, where his grave was disturbed. It's territorial. It has a hunting ground. So we set a trap? Use someone as bait. We use me. I'm on its list. It knows I've been investigating, connecting the dots. I'm probably near the top of its priority targets. Absolutely not. I'm not using a civilian as bait for a supernatural killer. You don't have a choice. How many more people are going to die tonight while we sit here arguing? I'm volunteering. Just make sure you have enough firepower to take it down when it comes for me. Detective Reeves stared at me for a long moment. Then she grabbed the radio. All units, we're changing strategy. Converge on the following location. We're setting up a perimeter and preparing to engage the target directly. Word count. Chapter 3, Nava 1,800 words. Total word count, 5,400 words. Chapter 4, The Trap, 1,800 words. They set up the perimeter around Marion Square, the same place where Elijah Moss had been executed over a century and a half ago. During the day, it was a peaceful park in the heart of Charleston's historic district. At night, under a full moon on Halloween, it felt like standing in a graveyard. I stood in the center of the square, near the fountain. Floodlights illuminated the area, making me an obvious target. 50 yards away in every direction, SWAT officers waited in concealed positions with rifles loaded with silver ammunition. Detective Reeves was in a mobile command unit parked on Calhoun Street, watching through thermal cameras and night vision scopes. This is the stupidest thing I've ever done, I muttered into the microphone hidden under my jacket. You're doing great, Detective Reeves said through the earpiece. Just stay calm. If it shows up, hit the ground immediately. I'll take care of the rest. If it shows up. We were gambling that the creature would recognize me as a threat, someone who knew too much and come to eliminate me. But there was no guarantee it would take the bait. I waited. 1 hour passed, then 2. The temperature dropped as midnight approached. My breath formed clouds in the cold air. I stamped my feet to keep circulation going, trying not to think about how exposed I was. Around 1:15 a.m., Detective Reeves's voice crackled in my ear. Daniel, we just got a report. Another attack. 4 blocks from your position. The Whitmore family. 2 adults. 3 children. My stomach turned. Are they? 1 survivor. The teenage daughter locked herself in a panic room. She called 911. Units are responding now. It's playing with us, I said. It knows we're here. It's killing people anyway, showing us we can't protect them. Stay in position. If it attacked the Whitmores, it might be heading in our direction. Another 30 minutes crawled by. Then I heard it. Not a sound exactly, more like a change in the air pressure. The night went silent. Birds that had been calling stopped. Even the traffic noise from nearby streets seemed to fade. Something's wrong, I said into the microphone. We're not seeing anything on thermal, Detective Reeves replied. All sectors report negative contact. The floodlights went out, all of them, simultaneously, plunging the square into darkness. Emergency backup lights should have kicked in immediately, but they didn't. We've lost power to the square, someone said over the radio. Switching to night vision. I could hear SWAT officers reporting in, maintaining their positions, but I couldn't see them. The moon provided some light, but shadows covered most of the square. I turned slowly, trying to see in every direction at once. That's when I smelled it. A mixture of wet dog, rotting meat, and something else. Something that reminded me of burnt hair and old blood. "It's here," I whispered. I heard movement to my left. I spun toward the sound but saw nothing. Then movement to my right, behind me. It was circling, staying in the shadows, assessing the situation. "We have thermal contact," Detective Reeves said urgently. "Northwest corner, moving through the trees. All units' target is approaching Pierce's position from the northwest." Rifle shots erupted from that direction. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness. I heard bullets hitting something solid, heard the creature snarl. But it didn't stop. It moved faster, zigzagging between trees and monuments, using the terrain for cover. More shots came from different positions as SWAT officers tried to track it. The sound was deafening, echoing off the buildings surrounding the square. I dropped to the ground like Detective Reeves had instructed, making myself as small a target as possible. The creature burst from the trees 20 feet away from me. In the moonlight and muzzle flashes, I got my first clear look at it. 7 feet of muscle and rage, covered in dark fur matted with blood. Its yellow eyes locked onto me. It charged. Officers fired from multiple positions. I saw bullets hit its torso, its legs, its shoulders. The creature stumbled but kept coming. It was almost on top of me when a burst of automatic fire caught it in the chest, the silver rounds punching through fur and flesh. The creature roared, a sound that was half human scream and half animal howl. It veered away from me, crashing into a stone monument. For a moment I thought we'd done it. I thought the silver bullets had worked. Then it stood up. Blood poured from a dozen wounds, but it was still moving. It turned toward the nearest SWAT position and launched itself forward with terrifying speed. The officer barely had time to scream before the creature was on him, claws tearing through tactical armor like paper. 2 more officers rushed in to help their teammate. The creature spun and caught one with a backhand that sent him flying 15 feet. He hit a tree and didn't move. The other officer got off 3 shots at point-blank range before the creature grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. I heard bones crack from where I lay. The officer went limp. The creature dropped the body and turned back toward me. More gunfire erupted. The creature took hits from multiple directions but kept moving. It was heading straight for me, leaving a trail of blood but showing no signs of slowing down. I scrambled backward, trying to put distance between us. My hand touched something metal, a park bench. I grabbed it and threw it at the creature. It batted the bench aside without breaking stride. Then something hit the creature from the side. Another officer, this one with a shotgun loaded with silver slugs. He fired repeatedly at close range, each blast tearing chunks out of the creature's torso. It screamed and turned on him, but he kept firing, emptying the weapon. The creature staggered. Blood poured from massive wounds in its chest and stomach. It dropped to one knee, gasping. The officer reloaded and aimed at its head. The creature was faster. It lunged forward and tore out the officer's throat with its teeth. The man dropped, blood spraying across the grass. "Fall back!" Detective Reeves shouted over the radio. "All units, fall back to secondary positions!" But the creature wasn't done. Despite its injuries, despite the silver burning through its system, it continued hunting. It killed 2 more officers who were retreating, moving with a speed that seemed impossible for something so badly wounded. I ran toward the mobile command unit, where Detective Reeves was coordinating the response. Behind me, I could hear the creature following, its claws scraping on pavement, its breathing wet and labored. I reached the command unit and pounded on the door. Detective Reeves threw it open and pulled me inside, slamming the door shut. Through the window, I saw the creature standing 50 feet away, illuminated by the vehicle's exterior lights. It was dying. That much was clear. Its chest had been torn open by the shotgun blasts, and I could see bone and internal organs, blood pooled beneath it. But it was still conscious, still focused on me. It raised one clawed hand and pointed, just as it had done at Phil Morrison's house. The message was the same. Not yet, but soon. Then it turned and limped away, disappearing into the darkness between buildings. "All units, pursue the target," Detective Reeves ordered. "Do not let it escape." Officers converged on the creature's last known position, but by the time they got there, it was gone. They found a blood trail leading into the storm drain system beneath the city, but the trail disappeared after 50 yards. The creature had escaped again. We'd wounded it badly, maybe even fatally, but it had survived. And in the process, it had killed 5 police officers and demonstrated that even our best weapons and tactics weren't enough. Detective Reeves sat in the command unit, staring at casualty reports. 5 officers dead. 3 more injured. The Whitmore family wiped out except for one traumatized teenager. And the creature was still out there. "We can't beat this thing," she said quietly. "Every time we engage it, we lose people. It's stronger than us, faster than us, and it won't stop." "There has to be a way," I said. "My great-great-grandfather's journal mentioned a reverend who believed the curse was incomplete. If we can figure out how the curse works, maybe we can break it." "We don't have time for research. That thing is going to heal and come back, and it's going to keep killing until every descendant is dead. Then we need to find someone who understands curses, someone who deals with the supernatural." Detective Reeves looked at me like I was insane. "You want me to find a witch doctor? A voodoo priest? This is Charleston, not some Hollywood horror movie." "This entire situation is a horror movie. We're fighting a werewolf created by a man who sold his soul for revenge. Normal rules don't apply anymore." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. "This is Detective Reeves, Charleston PD. I need contact information for anyone in the area who deals with occult matters. Yes, I'm serious. No, this isn't a prank call." 20 minutes later, we had a list of 3 people. A college professor who studied folklore and mythology, a woman who ran a shop selling crystals and herbs in the historic district, and a priest from a small church on James Island who apparently performed exorcisms. We tried the professor first. He listened to our story with growing skepticism, then politely suggested we seek psychiatric help. The woman with the crystal shop was more open-minded, but admitted she had no experience with actual curses, only theories about energy and intention. That left the priest. Father Vincent O'Malley was 70 years old, with white hair and sharp blue eyes. We met him at his church at 3 in the morning. He listened to our account without interruption, occasionally nodding or making notes. When we finished, he sat back in his chair and sighed. "I've heard stories about the moss curse. Every priest who's served in Charleston for the past 100 years has been warned about it. But I never believed it was real." "It's real," Detective Reeves said. "We have 11 dead bodies to prove it." Father O'Malley stood and walked to a bookshelf, pulling down a leather-bound volume. "The church keeps records of unexplained phenomena, possessions, hauntings, curses. There's an entry from 1865 about a reverend named Walsh who tried to stop the killings." He opened the book and read aloud. "Reverend Edmund Walsh attempted to break the curse through prayer and holy intervention. He went to Marion Square at midnight on September 20th, 1865, carrying holy water and religious artifacts. He believed he could banish the creature through faith. They found his body the next morning, torn to pieces. Whatever power had been invoked when Elijah Moss sold his soul, it was stronger than Walsh's prayers. So religion can't stop it, I said. Walsh's approach couldn't stop it, but that doesn't mean the curse is unbreakable. Father O'Malley closed the book and looked at us. Every curse has rules, terms that must be followed. The creature exists because Elijah Moss made a deal with something dark. He traded his eternal soul for the power to exact revenge. But deals like that always have conditions. What kind of conditions? That's what we need to determine. The curse was born from injustice. Moss was innocent, falsely accused and executed. His final words were a promise of vengeance against those who watched him die. The creature is fulfilling that promise. But everyone who was at the execution is long dead, Detective Reeves said. It's killing their descendants now. How does that make sense? Blood guilt, Father O'Malley said. The sins of the father passed to the children. In the creature's logic, the descendants carry the responsibility for what happened. They inherit the debt. Then how do we break it? How do we end the curse? The priest was quiet for a moment. There might be a way. If the curse was born from injustice, perhaps justice can end it. Moss was executed for a crime he didn't commit. Someone framed him. If we can discover who was truly guilty, if we can clear Moss's name and acknowledge the wrong that was done to him, it might satisfy the terms of the curse. You want us to solve a theft case from 1865? Detective Reeves looked incredulous. Father, the evidence is gone. The witnesses are dead. There's no way to investigate something that happened over 150 years ago. Then you'd better hope the creature bleeds out from its wounds, Father O'Malley said. Because if it heals and comes back, more people are going to die, and eventually it will kill everyone on its list, including Mr. Pierce. We left the church as dawn broke over Charleston. The Halloween night was over, but the nightmare continued. Detective Reeves drove us back to the police station in silence. I could see her mind working, trying to figure out how to investigate an impossible case. The newspaper article, I said suddenly. The one about Moss's execution. It mentioned he was accused of stealing from a merchant's warehouse. There might be court records, arrest reports, something that could point us to the real thief. Court records from 1865 would be in the state archives, if they survived. We spent the next 12 hours in the South Carolina Department of Archives and History, digging through boxes of old documents. Most of the records from that period were damaged or incomplete. The Civil War had disrupted everything, and Reconstruction-era record-keeping was spotty at best. But we found something. A ledger from the merchant's warehouse that had been robbed. It listed inventory, shipments, and employees. 3 days before the theft, someone had noted a discrepancy in a shipment of cotton. 20 bales had arrived, but only 18 were recorded in the official manifest. The notation was made by the warehouse manager, a man named Cornelius Ashford. That's our guy, I said. He was skimming inventory, selling it on the side. When the shortage was discovered, he needed someone to blame. Elijah Moss worked at the harbor. He would have been an easy target. A black man with no power, no connections. Who would believe his word against a white merchant? We found more evidence as we kept searching. Financial records showing Ashford had made large deposits in the weeks following the theft. Correspondence between Ashford and other merchants, discussing inventory concerns. And finally, a letter from Ashford to his brother in Georgia, dated 3 months after Moss's execution. In the letter, Ashford admitted what he'd done. He'd been stealing from the warehouse for months, falsifying records to cover his tracks. When the owner started asking questions, Ashford had planted evidence in Moss's room and reported him to the authorities. He expressed no remorse, only relief that the matter had been resolved. "This is it," Detective Reeves said. "This proves Moss was innocent. Ashford framed him. Now we need to make it public. Clear Moss's name officially. How? We can't exactly hold a press conference about a curse. We don't have to mention the curse. We present this as a historical correction. New evidence has come to light proving Elijah Moss was wrongly executed. The city issues a formal apology, acknowledges the injustice. Maybe that's enough to satisfy the terms. Detective Reeves made calls. She contacted the mayor's office, the Historical Society, local news outlets. She explained that new evidence had been discovered regarding a historical wrongful execution and that the city needed to issue a statement acknowledging the error. The response was bureaucratic confusion. People wanted to know why this mattered, why it was urgent, why a case from 1865 required immediate attention. Detective Reeves couldn't tell them the truth, so she emphasized the moral obligation to correct historical injustices. By evening, we'd managed to arrange an emergency meeting with the mayor and city council. Detective Reeves presented the evidence we'd found, explaining that Elijah Moss had been an innocent man executed for a crime committed by Cornelius Ashford. The council members were sympathetic but confused about the urgency. One of them asked, "Why are we discussing this now? What's the pressing need?" Before Detective Reeves could answer, my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice, rough and distorted but unmistakably speaking words. "Justice or death. Choose." The line went dead. The creature was listening. Somehow, it knew what we were trying to do, and it was giving us an ultimatum. I played the message for the room. Several council members went pale. The mayor leaned back in his chair, suddenly looking much older. "What the hell is going on?" he asked. Detective Reeves took a breath. "Mr. Mayor, I need you to trust me. There is an active threat to this city that's already killed 11 people. The only way to stop it is to correct a historical wrong. I need you to issue a formal statement clearing Elijah Moss's name and acknowledging the injustice of his execution. I need you to do it now, tonight, and I need it to be public." You're asking me to believe that a phone call from some psychopath is connected to a case from the 1800s? I'm asking you to trust that I know what I'm doing, please. The mayor looked at the evidence we'd presented, then at the other council members. "If I do this, if we issue this statement, will it stop the killings? I believe so. And if it doesn't, then we're no worse off than we are now. But if we don't try, more people will die. Possibly everyone in this room." That got their attention. The mayor called for a vote. It took 20 minutes of debate, but finally, they agreed. The city would issue a formal statement acknowledging that Elijah Moss had been wrongly convicted and executed, that evidence proved his innocence, and that the city offered its deepest apologies for this historic injustice. The statement was released at 11:47 p.m., posted on the city's website and social media channels. Local news outlets picked it up immediately, running stories about the historical discovery and the city's apology. We waited. Midnight came and went. No attacks were reported. No mysterious phone calls. The city was quiet. Detective Reeves and I returned to Marion Square, the site of Elijah's execution. We stood near the fountain, looking at the place where he had died. "Do you think it worked?" she asked. "I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe the creature is just healing, waiting for another chance." We stayed there until dawn, watching for any sign of movement in the shadows. Nothing appeared. The square remained peaceful as the sun rose. Over the next week, there were no more attacks, no more deaths. The creature seemed to have disappeared. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was still out there, watching, waiting. The curse had been born from injustice and rage. We'd addressed the injustice, but the rage remained. Elijah Moss had suffered, had been betrayed and murdered, and no apology could undo that pain. I visited the old burial site where Moss had been interred. Someone had placed flowers near the disturbed earth. A small handmade sign read, Elijah Moss, 1832-1865, innocent, remembered. I stood there for a long time, thinking about the man whose death had spawned such horror, thinking about justice and revenge, and whether there was any difference between the two. As I turned to leave, I heard something. A whisper on the wind, so faint I almost missed it. Not finished. I spun around, searching for the source of the whisper. The burial site was empty. Trees swayed in the morning breeze. Nothing moved in the shadows. But I'd heard it. Those two words, spoken with unmistakable menace. The curse wasn't broken. We'd only delayed it. I called Detective Reeves immediately. It's still active. The apology wasn't enough. Are you sure? We haven't had any incidents in a week. I heard it speak. At the burial site. It said it's not finished. She was quiet for a moment. Meet me at Father O'Malley's church. 1 hour. The priest was waiting for us when we arrived. He'd already heard about the city's formal apology and had been hoping it would work. The curse has a will of its own now, he said after I told him what I'd heard. It's been active for so long that it's become independent of its original purpose. Elijah Moss wanted justice, but what he created wants only death. Then how do we stop it? I asked. There's one way. The creature exists because Moss sold his soul. That transaction created the curse. If we could reverse the transaction, return his soul, the curse would lose its power. How do we return a soul that was sold to the devil over 150 years ago? Father O'Malley pulled out a different book, this one even older than the first. The pages were yellow and brittle. There are rituals, dangerous ones. They require going to the place where the transaction occurred and offering something in exchange, a life for a life, a soul for a soul. You're talking about human sacrifice, Detective Reeves said. I'm talking about willing sacrifice. Someone would have to offer themselves to break the curse, trade their soul for Moss's, essentially freeing him from the bargain he made. That's insane. We're not sacrificing anyone. Then the creature will continue killing until every descendant is dead. And after that, it will likely continue hunting, finding new targets, expanding its rage. The curse will spread beyond Charleston, beyond South Carolina. It will become something unstoppable. I thought about the 11 people who'd already died, the families destroyed, the terror that gripped the city, and I thought about my great-great-grandfather, who'd fled and lived the rest of his life in fear. I'll do it, I said. Daniel, no. Detective Reeves grabbed my arm. We'll find another way. There is no other way. My ancestor was there when Moss died. In a way, I inherited his guilt. Let me end this. Father O'Malley looked at me with sad eyes. It's not that simple. The ritual requires the sacrifice to occur at the exact location where Moss made his bargain. We don't know where that happened. It had to be in his cell, right? The night before his execution, when he swore his oath. Possibly. But the old jail was demolished in 1903. There's an office building there now. Out, we spent the rest of the day researching the location of the old Charleston jail. City records showed it had stood at the corner of Magazine and Logan Streets. The building that replaced it was a 4-story insurance company headquarters. Detective Reeves used her authority to evacuate the building, claiming there was a gas leak. By evening, the structure was empty. We entered through the main doors, carrying equipment Father O'Malley said we'd need for the ritual. The priest led us to the basement, using old architectural plans to determine where the jail cells would have been located. We found the spot in a storage room filled with filing cabinets and old office furniture. Father O'Malley drew symbols on the floor with chalk, forming a circle approximately 10 feet in diameter. He placed candles at specific points around the circle and laid out various religious artifacts. "When we begin the ritual, the creature will know," he said. "It will come to stop us. We'll need to complete the ritual before it arrives, or we'll all die." "How long does it take?" Detective Reeves asked. 30 minutes if everything goes smoothly. But these things rarely go smoothly. She posted 4 SWAT officers at the building's entrances, all armed with silver ammunition. More officers waited outside as backup. If the creature showed up, they'd try to slow it down, buy us time to finish. We started at midnight. Father O'Malley began chanting in Latin, reading from the ancient book. I stood in the center of the chalk circle, feeling foolish and terrified. The candle flames flickered despite the lack of wind in the windowless basement. 10 minutes into the ritual, the lights went out. "Keep going," Detective Reeves said, pulling out a flashlight. "Don't stop." Father O'Malley continued chanting, his voice steady. The temperature in the room dropped rapidly. I could see my breath in the flashlight beam. 15 minutes. The SWAT officers upstairs started reporting strange sounds, scratching on the walls, footsteps on the roof. Something was circling the building. 20 minutes. An officer's radio crackled with static, then cut out entirely. All communications went dead. Father O'Malley's chanting grew more intense. The chalk symbols on the floor began to glow with a faint blue light. I felt something pulling at me, like invisible hands trying to drag me down through the floor. Then we heard it, the unmistakable sound of claws on concrete. The creature was inside the building. "How much longer?" Detective Reeves asked, her voice tight with fear. 5 minutes, Father O'Malley said without breaking his chant. Gunfire erupted from somewhere above us. Automatic weapons, the sound deafening even through the floor. Officers were engaging the creature. The shooting continued for 30 seconds, then stopped abruptly. Screaming followed. Brief and horrible, then silence. "It's coming," Detective Reeves said. She moved to the doorway, her service pistol drawn and loaded with silver rounds. "Finish the ritual." More sounds from above. Furniture being thrown, walls being torn apart. The creature was hunting through the building, searching for us. 4 minutes remaining. The blue glow from the chalk symbols intensified. I felt like I was being pulled in 2 directions at once. My body in the basement, but my soul being tugged somewhere else. 3 minutes. Heavy footsteps on the stairs leading down to the basement. The creature had found us. Detective Reeves fired as soon as it appeared in the doorway. 6 shots, all hitting center mass. The creature stumbled but kept coming. She emptied her magazine, dropped it, and slammed in a fresh one. The creature was exactly as I remembered from Marion Square. 7 feet of nightmare, covered in blood and matted fur. But its wounds from our previous encounter had healed. It was at full strength again. 2 minutes! Father O'Malley's voice rose to a shout, the Latin words filling the room. The creature lunged at him, but Detective Reeves stepped between them, firing point blank into its face. The silver rounds tore through the creature's jaw, shattering teeth and bone. It roared and backhanded her across the room. She hit the wall hard and dropped to the floor, not moving. The creature turned toward Father O'Malley. The priest didn't stop chanting, didn't even look at the monster advancing on him. His faith kept him focused on the ritual. 1 minute. I felt myself being torn apart. The ritual was reaching its climax, pulling at my very essence. The pain was incredible, like every nerve in my body was on fire. The creature raised its claws to kill Father O'Malley. Detective Reeves appeared behind it, blood streaming from a cut on her head. She'd grabbed a fire axe from the wall. She swung with everything she had, burying the blade in the creature's spine. It screamed and spun around, its claws catching her across the chest. She went down again, her tactical vest torn open, blood soaking through her shirt. The creature pulled the axe from its back and advanced on her. She crawled backward, reaching for her fallen gun. "Now!" Father O'Malley shouted. "Complete the sacrifice!" I didn't know what to do. The ritual required a willing sacrifice, but nobody had explained the mechanism. How was I supposed to give my soul? Then I understood. I had to accept it. Accept death. Accept the exchange. The creature stood over Detective Reeves, raising the axe for a killing blow. "I accept," I screamed. "Take me instead. Let Elijah Moss be free." Everything stopped. The creature froze mid-swing. The blue glow from the symbols became blinding. I felt something massive and ancient turn its attention toward me, evaluating my offer. Then pain beyond anything I'd ever imagined. It felt like my soul was being ripped out through my chest. I collapsed to my knees, unable to scream, unable to breathe. The creature dropped the axe. It fell to the ground, convulsing. The fur began to fall away in patches. The massive frame shrank. The claws retracted. Within seconds, a man lay on the floor where the monster had been. An older black man wearing clothes from the 1860s. Elijah Moss, as he'd been before his execution. He looked at me with clear, human eyes. No hatred, no rage, just exhaustion and relief. "Thank you," he whispered. Then his body dissolved into ash, scattering across the floor. The pain in my chest intensified. I was dying. I could feel it. The exchange was complete. My soul for his. The curse was broken, but I'd paid the price. Father O'Malley knelt beside me. "Hold on, Daniel. I'm not done yet." He placed his hands on my chest and began a different chant. This one wasn't in Latin. I couldn't identify the language, but it was older, more primal. The pain started to fade. I could breathe again. The feeling of being torn apart subsided. "What? What did you do?" I gasped. "I completed only half the ritual," Father O'Malley said with a slight smile. "You offered your soul, and that offer was accepted. But I invoked a loophole. Your soul was exchanged for Moss's, but Moss's soul was already promised to darkness. By freeing it through your sacrifice, you essentially sacrificed something that was already condemned. The exchange was valid, the curse was broken, but your soul returns to you. That's cheating. I prefer to call it clever theology. God provides loopholes for those who seek them." Detective Reeves had managed to sit up, clutching her chest. The wounds were deep, but not immediately fatal. She'd live. We stayed in that basement until dawn, too exhausted to move. Emergency services finally arrived, alerted by officers who'd been stationed outside. They found the bodies of 4 SWAT officers who'd tried to stop the creature. Good men who died protecting others. The official report listed the deaths as the result of an armed assailant who was killed during the confrontation. The truth would never be made public. How could it be? But the killings stopped. No more deaths during full moons. No more descendants hunted by something that shouldn't exist. Charleston slowly returned to normal, though those of us who knew the truth would never forget. I left the city 2 months later. I'd finished my research, but I couldn't stay. Too many memories, too much death. Before I left, I visited Elijah Moss's grave one final time. The city had placed a proper headstone there, acknowledging him as an innocent man wrongly executed. I placed flowers on the grave and said a prayer for him. For all the people who died because of injustice and rage and curses that should never have been spoken. As I walked away, I felt no presence watching me. No whisper on the wind. Elijah Moss was finally at peace. But late at night, when I can't sleep, I sometimes wonder. The curse was born from a man's rage and a devil's bargain. We broke it through sacrifice and faith. But how many other curses are out there, waiting in the darkness? How many other wrongs have spawned horrors that hunt in the night? I don't know the answer, and I'm not sure I want to. Daniel Pierce's investigation into Charleston's cursed past stands as a stark warning that some debts are written in blood, and some vengeance transcends death itself. The curse may be broken, but the darkness that gave it birth still lingers in forgotten corners of history, waiting for the next injustice to awaken it. Like this video if the brutal werewolf attack sent chills down your spine. Comment below what terrified you most, the creature's relentless hunt through generations, or the horrifying revelation that a soul can be traded for revenge. Share it with someone who needs to know that curses born from wrongful death can echo through centuries. And if you're ready to confront what lurks in America's blood-soaked past, subscribe to Mythstar Midnight Horror and turn on the notification bell. That way, when ancient evils rise again, you'll be the first to know the truth.